This is going to be his last big contract. When you look at what he's ultimately going to earn here, he's going to have a huge chance of winning the Champions League. He's virtually guaranteed silverware.
Hello and welcome to the big stage. Shane Anderson with you once again as the English Premier League is now 2 weeks in. And haven't we seen some amazing conversations take place? First of all, we're seeing Manchester City back on track with a great result last week. There's also plenty of rumours going around that we might see Ronaldo making his way to Man City. But we also saw last weekend plenty of discussion about refereeing decisions and also VAR. We're only in the early stages of the season, but they're going to be big talking points, I think, for the weeks and months ahead. Joining me to discuss it all, Rory Jennings back on the show. Rory, good to catch up. And it really was a monumental weekend in many ways because, as I touched on, Man City looks to be back on track with a great result. But there's also plenty of other things happening, and in particular, discussions and rumours that we might see Ronaldo making his way to Man City.
Well, I mean, what a way to get over the upset of losing out on Harry Kane. I mean, if you think that Manchester City, it looked like they'd missed their target, it looked like that could cost them, but you could actually make a case that they've signed somebody that, at least for a very small period of time, at least for this season, could actually be an improvement. If you think about Kevin De Bruyne, Jack Grealish, Riyad Mahrez, Phil Foden, all putting it on a plate for Cristiano Ronaldo, it is a terrifying thought. And I can't see a world now where Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't score at a minimum of 20 goals in the Premier League this season.
It's fascinating. It's the time that we're going to wear. Rumours are circulating on social media, particularly Twitter, that a deal has been done. Basically, in all sense of purposes, a deal between Juventus and Man City will see Ronaldo move. Do you think it's 100% locked in, or will there be a bit more discussion over the next few days?
I actually think this one will happen. I think that it suits everybody. I think Juventus will pretend, and I think the public face of Juventus will say they don't want to lose Ronaldo. Ronaldo is their poster boy. He's one of football's most iconic players ever. And naturally, a club of Juventus' stature don't want to let him go. But it's been a tough year for Italian football. Juventus haven't been totally isolated from the pandemic. They are skint. And you've got to remember that Ronaldo deal was signed pre-pandemic. It's a huge deal, eye-watering deal. And to get him off their books, they're not even champions at the moment. You know, they were going for 10 in a row. They lost out to Inter Milan. I think getting Ronaldo out, getting him off the wage bill isn't totally unpalatable to Juventus. From City's perspective, it only makes sense. It's a fantastic signing for City and for Ronaldo himself. You know, when you look at the parties involved, the three parties, I think it's one of those weird deals. This doesn't happen often. But Shane, am I right here? This suits everybody.
I think you've summed it up beautifully. It looks to be one of those situations where it's all falling into place. And it's very hard to say that no one's going to come out on top. I do want to push you on Harry Kane, though, because it's been the other big talking point. And as always, you've been quite vocal on social media and on your YouTube channels about Harry Kane. What have you made about his decision that he's now allegedly staying at Spurs for potentially the next few months, but in all sense and purposes, will he be there all season?
Yes, I think he'll be there for this season. And I actually think the terminology in his tweet was fairly revealing to that fact. He said, "I am delighted to sign for this season." He has admitted that there could be a change of heart this time next year. And I think that the way that he went about it, it was so disingenuous. I think it was clear to everybody that he was desperate to leave. He admitted it on a TV show with Gary Neville during the season last year. How disrespectful. During Tottenham's campaign of last season, he had a conversation with Gary Neville where he said that he wanted to leave. In that interview, he actually had the audacity to state the amount that he should leave for. I mean, that baffles me. If the two parties involved in the negotiation, the person being discussed doesn't have any right there to have any impact on the value. That would be like selling your house and the walls tell you what it's worth. That's just not how it works at all. So Kane was desperate to leave, and I think that is one of the least controversial things I've ever said. Kane was definitely desperate to leave. He then said that he's decided to stay due to the reception that he got from the fans, the Tottenham faithful, as if that's going to win them over. Amazingly, it did. But to me, it's just so transparent. He's not staying because the Tottenham fans sung his name. He's staying because the valuation wasn't met. I would have had so much more respect for him if he'd just come out and said, I wanted to go. I was desperate to play for Pep Guardiola. The project at Manchester City is so appealing. The move didn't work out, but now I'm 100% devoted to Tottenham. To try and pull the wool over everybody's eyes like this, it's an insult, in my opinion.
What do you think the fans' response will be then in the weeks ahead? Do you think they'll just get automatically behind him because the deal is done and there's a bit of security now around him staying? Or do you think there could be, as you've sort of pinpointed, a little bit of maybe resentment because the real reason behind his decision to stay hasn't been discussed?
I think that it will split the Tottenham faithful. I think what it will definitely do is it will have a negative impact on the legacy of Harry Kane. Up until this summer, Harry Kane was going to go down as Tottenham's greatest ever player. I think that's fair to say. I know people will talk to you about their other, whether it's our dealers. That was a little bit before my time, so I can't quite comment on that. But Premier League era, Harry Kane is their best ever player, and he was going to go down as a legend. He would have probably had a statue built for him at that new stadium, which is very impressive. I think that he has now put paid to that. I don't think that happens. I think as soon as you put in the effort to leave, it has a negative impact. And look, do you know who we can use here, Shane, as a case study? Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney is, if we're being totally honest, Wayne Rooney is the best ever player to play for Manchester United in the Premier League era. That is undoubtedly true. He isn't viewed that way because ultimately he put 2 transfer requests in to leave the club. Certainly one. Any Manchester United fans may get on my back here. Certainly put 1. I would say 2. They would contest the 2 and try and blame the agent. But he tried to leave the club twice. The fact that he did that means that history isn't quite as kind to Wayne Rooney as it should be. Wayne Rooney was unplayable for Manchester United. He deserves far more respect than he gets. And I think that Harry Kane has now confined himself to the ash heap of history when it comes to Tottenham fans. They will gloss over his role and they will be wounded at the fact that he was so desperate to leave. And it's given everyone else so much ammunition. Anyone that doesn't support Tottenham will just say, what kind of club are you? Your favourite player wants to leave. Your favourite player doesn't even want to play for you.
Yeah, I think you raise a very good point. And that discussion point around legacy is super important because at the end of the day, it's legacy and attachment to a club, which is what makes everyone a fan. It's why you're a fan of Chelsea. If there does appear to be as one of these great players who doesn't want to be in an environment that everyone is so passionate about, there will be elements of frustration that'll build. I think it's going to be one of probably the big talking points, and depending on how his form transpires over the weeks and months ahead, and again, that'll all sort of add into the mix, and it'll end up being a hot topic for the media throughout the season.
Yeah, no doubt. The one good thing when it comes to the Tottenham fans and Harry Kane's relationship is football fans, by their very nature, are fairly fickle. Some are fairly fickle. Some will be very rigid to their principle and be very unforgiving towards Harry Kane, probably forever. But the vast majority are fickle. And when Harry Kane scores his next goal for the club, which will come very soon because he is an elite footballer, they will start singing his name again. So it's going to be quite easy for Kane to at least calm the hot topic of his transfer with his form, because there is no conversation to be had there. He is top class, and as soon as he's playing in front of a packed stadium and scores his first couple of goals, it will all be forgotten momentarily. What it does to the legacy, though, is a different question. But for the 90 minutes and beyond, he'll be fine.
We're 2 weeks into the Premier League season. 5 teams are undefeated, including your beloved Chelsea. What did you make of the performance on the weekend?
Yeah, it was about as flawless as you can get. But do you know what, Shane? What I would say about it, it was ridiculously easy. Like, Chelsea didn't really get out of second gear against Arsenal. And going to Arsenal, I'm from North London, and I'm also from a generation where Arsenal away is one of the most intense, difficult games of the season. So to play them that early would be a disaster under the normal circumstances. But this isn't Arsenal under the normal circumstances. They were pitiful. It was so easy. Chelsea didn't get out of second gear. And do you know what it felt like to me? One of those home games where you play a home game against bottom half opposition, and you go 2-0 up fairly early, and then you just make sure that nothing else happens. Nobody gets injured. Nobody gets booked. You make sure that they don't rally. You make sure that they have nothing to feast upon, nothing to excite the fans, and you easily take the sting out of the game. Chelsea effectively treated Arsenal away from home as if they were Bolton Wanderers 2006. It was a shameful day for Arsenal Football Club.
I remember on last week's show, you actually said you were a little bit nervous going into that game, so it must have been quite pleasing then to see things go to plan and get the result that did transpire. So from that perspective, as we go into this week, and I know we're going to talk in more detail up against Liverpool a little bit later in the show, but are you going into this game more confident than perhaps you've been from their performances in the first 2 weeks?
Oh, the trouble is comparing Liverpool and Arsenal is very difficult at the moment. Look, as much as I was fearful about Arsenal, it was because of the institution. I wasn't fearful of Mikel Arteta. I wasn't fearful of any of the players on the pitch. I am respectful and in awe of Arsenal as an institution. The Marble Halls, Highbury, Thierry Henry, Charlie George, whatever it is. And the institution scares me. But the players don't. That isn't quite the case with Liverpool. Of course, the institution scares me, but so do the players. Mohamed Salah can easily have a brilliant game and drive his team to a victory. It's ultimately going to come down to Romelu Lukaku versus Virgil van Dijk. Whoever wins that battle, I think, will win the game. But no, I'm not. I wasn't confident last week because of the institution, but this is huge. Chelsea versus Liverpool. We will get. It's a barometer for both of our seasons. How Liverpool will do this season and how Chelsea will do this season will be revealed Saturday night.
Yeah, looking forward to talking more about that a little bit later on the show with you. Let's talk West Ham. They're sitting on top of the Premiership table at the moment. What have you made of their performance, particularly last week?
Yeah, amazing. It was an amazing win. I'm terribly surprised. I think it's a huge statement from them. They need backing now. They are fighting for the first time in years. They are fighting a season on four fronts. They're in Europe. They need a squad. They're going to sign Kurt Zouma. That is a big signing for them, really big. It's exactly what they need because what Kurt Zouma will bring to them on the pitch is huge. Obviously, he's a towering centre half. He is a sure defender. He knows what he's doing at the back, and he will improve their back line no end. But the other thing that we must factor into the Kurt Zouma signing, and this is what they're lacking, is nous and know-how and experience. Kurt Zouma's won the European Cup. Kurt Zouma has won the Europa League, the competition that West Ham are in. And his understanding of navigating the difficult terrain of Thursday, Sunday, going away from home in Europe to intense hostile atmospheres and getting results, that will be so useful to Dawson and Souček and Antonio, who, for the vast majority of that West Ham squad, it's a very new experience. So I think that's an astute one. The thing that they are going to have to do, though, they're going to have to find some cover for Mikel Antonio. He can't just do it on his own. He's got commitments with Jamaica. They're going to have to buy a striker.
All right, it's a good point that you raised. Let's reflect on last week. I'm going to give you a good pat on the back. So from a betting perspective, we had a 2.9 unit profit from your selections last week. Joe actually lost some money. He lost 0.2 of a unit. So it was a marginal loss, but Joe did come out on top with his picks 6-5. So well done to you, Rory, as we have a look at some of those results. But it's really important now that we spend some time on the topic of the week. And Rory, I've got to say the big talking point so far has been around refereeing decisions. Now, we've seen some news coming through. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Jurgen Klopp, both of them have complained about how referees are interpreting things so early in the season. Where are you at? What do you think's the big issue here?
I'm quite happy with it, which is weird. I think that the choice to try and let things flow is a good one. I think that should be at least the aspiration for a referee. Whereas last year it felt like we were looking for reasons to rule out goals. It looked like we were looking for reasons to halt the play, whereas I think it should be the opposite. I think we should be looking for reasons to allow goals, looking for reasons to allow the play to go on. And I wouldn't take Klopp or Solskjaer's comments too seriously. I mean, Solskjaer didn't have too many complaints when his team won 5-1. His complaint came when they drew 1-1, didn't it?
That's true. But it's amazing how quickly the mind can shift off the back of a performance. But I think that the problem here is everyone seems to be coming through with a different interpretation depending on where their angle is or what their result is leading to. But do we need to be going back? So from a commercial perspective, when we think about the Premier Leagues, should we be shifting the rules and the mindset back to days gone by, or have we got the model right?
I actually think it's okay. I think this year it's been good. I didn't enjoy last year. There were certain decisions I didn't agree with. I didn't like the use of VAR. I thought we got it wrong at various points. But this year, the ambition to allow the game to flow is a good one. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer having an issue that wasn't an issue, by the way. Like there wasn't a foul. That wasn't a foul on Bruno Fernandes. It wasn't. Bruno Fernandes, brilliant player, needs to be stronger in that scenario. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's flagged that because his team have dropped points and he wants to try and take the focus off himself. He didn't flag any issues. There were some very tasty challenges in the Leeds game. He didn't flag any of them because his team won 5-1. He's got an issue when his team draw 1-1, which I think tells the story.
There's been some chatter on social media, though, that perhaps there is some different refereeing interpretations as to what constitutes a foul. I mean, comparing the penalty at Tottenham, what they got, compared to the one that Bukayo Saka got with Arsenal, do you think that there is a broader interpretation challenge that some of the referees are facing with these new guidelines?
I mean, to a degree, I think inconsistency is something that always frustrates people when we talk about referees, and because now each issue, each decision is drilled down to, and we analyse the minutiae of every possible outcome, it's very difficult for referees. But overall, I find it fairly disingenuous for people to focus on referees. Everybody's got 90 minutes to win the game, and look, I don't have the issue. I think that this year the games have been more free flowing, more free scoring than actually the first week ever before, and I'm all for it. I just don't have the issue, and I think that we should understand that we don't have a robot refereeing the games. We don't have machinery refereeing the games. So it is down to individual interpretation. There are going to be some differences of opinion, but I don't find that the issue that other people seem to.
Rory, let me put this one to you then. Newcastle, they'll probably feel that the new idea of introducing thicker lines in offside decisions must have been forgotten in their match against Aston Villa. Are thicker lines really the answer here?
Look, as soon as you start drawing lines on a pitch, you lose me because, again, it's down to interpretation. The rule that I used to like was the daylight rule. I thought that was fairly obvious and it didn't create too many problems because there was no controversy associated with it. The daylight rule works. That's not what we've gone with. We've gone with a slightly thicker line. Newcastle have been harshly treated. Other clubs have got away with it, but you would like to think that these things will even out throughout the season. To get bogged down in it, if Steve Bruce wants to focus on that, I think he'd be more likely, and it would be better suited and serve him better if he were to focus on why his team were winning twice on the opening day of the season and ended up losing the game 4-2. Well, don't worry about the refereeing decisions as much. Worry about why Matt Ritchie is switched off from a penalty.
All right, last question before we move on. Do you think that the new guidelines will be a solution to perhaps some of the failings in officiating in the Premier League since VAR was introduced?
No, it won't be. No, definitely not. There will always be this. Like, Shane, I could guarantee you and I will be having a conversation about referees and the new interpretation. We'll be having this conversation in 2052. This continues. This isn't going anywhere because two people can see the same incident and genuinely view it differently. I didn't think it was a foul on Bruno Fernandes, for example. I didn't think it was a penalty for Bukayo Saka when he clashed with Reece James in the box. I just didn't think that was a penalty. Other people will look at that and think it was a stonewaller. But that's also the beauty of football. Discussions around those incidents over pints of Guinness. It's almost what the game is about. I like those issues. And I think the fact that we're trying to purify the game and sanitize it to a level where we never explore these things, it doesn't necessarily need to be fixed. I feel like we're trying to solve a problem that isn't necessarily a problem.
Appreciate the vote of support that I'll still be around in 2052, though. That means a great deal. All right, it's now time to get into the discussion of the games of the week, and let's have a look at the first of round 3 in the Premier League. And the first of the games that we will be focusing on is Manchester City and Arsenal. It's taking place at 12:30 p.m. on Saturday as we have a look at the odds here. And as expected off the back of last week's performance, Man City is a very, very short price favourite head-to-head. You're getting 1.25 against Arsenal at 12-1 or 13.0. The over 2.5 goals, a short price there with 1.63, under 2.5 goals, currently at 2.5. And the Asian handicap, Man City -1.5 at 1.77. Arsenal plus 1.5, you're getting 2.2. Man City now into ninth position. Arsenal languishing towards the bottom. Well, the bookmakers certainly see this as a one-sided affair, Rory. What is your overall assessment? Are you siding with the bookies?
I can't believe what I've just seen. Did I read that right? What were the Arsenal odds to win this game?
1.25, so they're ridiculously short. Head to head, they're absolutely dominating proceedings. So they're about 4-1 on.
I can't. That's got to be one of the worst ever for Arsenal to win a game. It's a two-horse race, isn't it? I've never seen odds like that for Arsenal. I mean,
Well,
that
I've,
is
I've got some. I've got some
unbelievable.
data coming through for you. Hans, our producers, just let me know that it's the longest recorded data. So the biggest odds for Arsenal currently at 13.5, so 12.5 to 1 in the history of the Premier League. So it's the longest price they've ever been.
That is unbelievable. I mean, that's got to be worth. I obviously think City are going to win the game, but it's a two-horse race. I've never seen odds like that for a two-horse race. And Arsenal are capable of winning. Look, I don't think they will win, but they had a very big result in the week. They scored a lot of goals. There seemed to be a bit of harmony on the pitch. The fans were singing for the players. It seemed to be a good result away from home at the Hawthorns. So at those odds, I'm now thinking that perhaps I should have. Look, I think City will win, but there's something in that. That's ridiculous odds for a two-horse race, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I mean, on pure form, Arsenal look absolutely disastrous at the moment. Let's be blunt. But as you say, they're the type of team when they've got the history and the legacy. If things can somehow go right, they could potentially be dangerous. But what we saw with Man City last week, I'd really like to get your assessment of their on-pitch performance. Like, have they turned the corner? Because they did look a bit disrupted in week one, but they were a vastly different team last week. They were really gelling together.
Yes, I think that's the exact way I would put it. They gelled, and I think we have to put it in context. They're playing Norwich at home. That's about as easy as it gets because Norwich will always try and play in a way that favours Manchester City. I think the last time Norwich played at Manchester City, they also lost 5-0. It's kind of what they do. But the confidence that would build, lots of different goal scorers. I think even Laporte got one, didn't he? Jack Grealish off the mark. It was exactly what they needed. And going into this game against Arsenal, City are going to be... They're going to be brilliant. Arsenal are going to have to really be on song to get anything out of this game. It's so unlikely. The fact that it's looking like Manchester City are going to announce Cristiano Ronaldo as well. Do you know what that does to the club? It just raises the tide, doesn't it? You know, when a player of that quality and caliber lands, Ballon d'Or winner after Ballon d'Or winner lands at your club, everything elevates, everything changes. You suddenly become a more exciting prospect. The fans who are arriving at the stadium are more excited. They are desperate for the victory, even more so. So the timing of this signature is not ideal for an Arsenal fan. And obviously City are looking very, very good. But those odds have changed those odds. I've never seen anything like that for an Arsenal team. So yeah, there is something in that for me.
Let me ask you this question then. You've seen Arsenal now 2 weeks in a row. What do you think their key problem is? Why are they playing so poorly?
Because I can answer this one very easily. Because they have a manager that is out of his depth. I think that is the issue. Combine the fact that they have an inexperienced manager who has serious limitations with the fact that they have a squad that lacks any personality, any identity, any leaders, and to be brutally honest, any real skill. Like, you know, there are some players that are quite good, but ultimately they are lacking in so many departments. They are the only club in history that I can remember who has managed to spend more than any other club in the world and not improve. Like their first team that they have now, I think you can make a case that it isn't any better than the first team that they finished with this time last year, and yet they've spent well over 100 million on that team. You know that yes, you can make the argument that they've bought for the future. The oldest player they've bought is 23 years old. They've signed Ramsdale, who's going to be cover and ultimately be groomed to become number one. There's all of that, but ultimately they've spent a fortune and they haven't improved. So that's also a problem because they're no better as a first 11 than they were this time last year. Can he
It's going
get
to be
it right
enormous.
is what it comes down to.
There's going to be an enormous amount of pressure on Arteta. Do you think it's a foregone conclusion he'll be gone from the team at some stage this year? And could it be as early as round 6?
Yes, I think he will not be Arsenal manager. But I think that's early because also I would suggest that they wouldn't sack him going into the Tottenham game. That Tottenham game, they'll be so desperate to win that. It's almost a prerequisite that they get something out of that game. And ultimately, Arsenal's season realistically begins after the Manchester City game. Because Brentford, you can make a case that it was a perfect storm. You know, the first game in the top flight in 75 years, the first game in the new stadium, Friday night. Arsenal are a big club. They feel like a scalp, but you can get at them. Brentford was a perfect storm. Chelsea are the European champions. Manchester City are the English champions. Now they start after that. And I think that they will pick up some points against Norwich. They'll pick up some points. I think Brighton are around that time. So ultimately, I think he will hang on for a little bit longer. But does he last the season? No, I don't think he does.
All right, fair assessment. From the last 8 matches, it's been 19-2 in favour of City, so they've been a scoring machine. Our community has actually found this bet builder on Betting Expert. So both teams to score, no. Winning margin at 2 or more, and head-to-head full time at 1-1. That's currently at 2-1. So you're getting about 3.0, which implies a solid 2-0 or more win for Manchester City. Is there a chance it ends going any other way, Rory, or are you very much siding with what our betting expert community thinks in regards to this game?
No, I think that's about spot on, actually. Winning margin of 2 or more, Arsenal not to score. Yeah, that tallies exactly with how it should go.
Okay. Give us your overall assessment. How much do they win by?
I think that they will win 3-0.
All right, Man City to win 3-0 from Rory. Joe Ryan's also gone for Man City to win, but he's gone slightly less, winning 2-0. So anyway, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with the first of the big games this weekend. Well, next up on Saturday are the 3 o'clock matches as we have a look at our quick predictions. And the first of the quick prediction games we'll take a look at is Aston Villa against Brentford. That takes place at 3 o'clock on Saturday. As we have a look at the head-to-head, Aston Villa is at even money, 2.0. Brentford at 3.9 with the 3.65 if it's a drawn game. So over 2.5 goals, you're getting 1.94. Under 2.5 goals at 2.05. Aston Villa minus a half at 2.04 on the Asian handicap. Brentford plus a half at 1.89. Brentford currently sitting in 8th position. Aston Villa sitting in 10th. Rory, as we have a look at this game, the bookmakers seem to have a bit of difficulty predicting which way it'll go. Villa are current favourites, but not very much when we compare with the Asian handicap, and whether it's going to be more or less than 2 goals seems to be a bit of a coin flip. What's your overall assessment of this game?
I think Aston Villa will beat Brentford 2-0. I think Danny Ings will be the difference. The goal that he scored last week is definitely goal of the month. It's a contender for goal of the season already. And I still think, I know it's not kind to say this. It seems to be being viewed as like slanderous to say this. But Brentford are going down. I don't understand this hype that they've got. They've had a very decent result against Arsenal, but we've explained that was the perfect storm. They had a fairly dismal draw with Crystal Palace, a Crystal Palace team who are also going to be in trouble. And ultimately, I think Brentford will go, and it will be the start of a very long and arduous season at Villa Park this week. Villa are good. Villa are really good. And I think that Villa will make light work of Brentford.
It's interesting that you go that way. So you're going to zip up. Our betting expert community have got value in Brentford to win, draw no bet. So they're going against you, but Joe Ryan's certainly going very much in the favour of you here. He also thinks they'll win 2-zip. So it should be a fascinating contest there. It's always good when you and Joe go up against the betting expert community. Let's move on to the next game, and this is Brighton up against Everton. Head-to-head, Brighton is your favourite at 2.38. Everton currently at 3.3. Over 2.5 goals, you're sitting on 2.3. Under 2.5 goals at 1.74. And the Asian handicap, Brighton at 0 at 1.65, Everton 0 at 2.27. Brighton currently 4th and undefeated. Everton currently in 7th position. So Brighton in the top 4, 2 wins from 2 against 2 of the relegation candidates. So you could probably put a question mark against their overall form. They now face an Everton that isn't really in the conversation at this stage. It's another one that just might be very hard to work out from an overall perspective. Rory, is this where you see that both teams can really lay their claims as to what type of season they're going to have in this game? Is this the game that really determines their overall form?
Yeah, absolutely, Shane. I think you're bang on. I think this is a season-defining game for both teams. And I think that Everton will make light work of it. I think Everton are going to be too strong for Brighton. I don't quite get the hype around Brighton. They seem to be the hipster's choice. Potter gets a lot of plaudits. Doesn't quite do it for me. And I think that Everton will be too good. They had a very good result last week, Everton. A very difficult place to go, Ellen Road. The first time it's been full in the Premier League since 2004. To get a point in that circumstance is very impressive. To do it in the way that they did, even more impressive. Damari Gray was fantastic. I think he could be a real problem. Really difficult to play against for Brighton. Calvert-Lewin is obviously top-notch and a real problem playing with his back to goal, playing on the last shoulder, running the channels. He's a brilliant player. And I think Everton will win this one 2-0.
It's only a small sample size, but Brighton look to be converting better. I think their conversion rate's gone from 8.2% now to 14.8%, so they're heading in the right direction. One thing that's noticeable, though, is that there looks to be a fair bit of momentum now coming for Everton. I know that betting expert community, they think Everton's a good bet here, head-to-head at 3.30, so very much in camp with you, Rory. So you're going 2-zip, Everton to win. Joe Ryan's also quite keen on Everton to win. He's going 3-1. But should be a fascinating game. But the betting expert community very much in the camp of Everton here, Rory.
Yes, I can't see a world in which Brighton can trouble them. Also, ultimately, it's going to come down to games like this will often come down to the managers. And while Potter is decent, Rafael Benitez will be too wily and will outfox him. I'm sure of that.
Okay, we move on to the next game, and this is Newcastle up against Southampton. From a bookmaker perspective, it's pretty tight here. We've got Newcastle marginal favourites at 2.62 in the head-to-head against Southampton at 2.8 with the draw at 3.5, so 5-2 the draw. If you're going over 2.5 goals in this contest, 1.85 the favourite way, under 2.5 goals at 2.10, and in the Asian handicap, Newcastle on 0, 1.87, Southampton at 2.06. So this really does look to be a very tight contest here between two teams who are in the second half of the table at the moment, so they've got a fair bit to play for here, Rory.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a difficult one to call this. It's a very tricky one, and therefore I went with a draw. I went with a 1-1.
Do you think it's a game like we touched on earlier, where it could be a bit of a season decider for them, or is it too early to say with these teams that they're still sort of working their way through things?
I mean, Southampton got a really positive result, didn't they, against Manchester United? They played well. Livramento had a coming-of-age moment, and I feel like they will just about be okay. I think, Romeo in the middle, Ward-Prowse in the middle, they'll fight hard enough to survive. I actually thought Newcastle would be better than they've looked. They haven't looked good so far, and I thought that they would because they finished last season in a very strong way. The signing of Joe Willock was an astute one, but it seems to be stale already for Bruce, and they could be in trouble. But I think they'll just about slog it out with a point. It will be a really underwhelming game. St James's Park will not be buoyant at full time. They will be fairly disappointed. But yeah, I think a 1-1 draw makes sense to me here.
All right, 1-1 draw from you. I know that from recent results, Southampton have actually lost their last 6 away matches in the Premier League. It's probably one of the reasons why the betting expert community is very much siding with Newcastle to win here. And Joe Ryan certainly in the camp of Newcastle as well. He thinks it'll be a 1-0 victory. So that is a Newcastle-Southampton. Rory going for the 1-1 draw. Let's move on to the next game. That is West Ham up against Crystal Palace. The market here with West Ham at 1.63 as favourites. Crystal Palace outsiders there at 5-1. Over 2.5 goals, you're getting 1.91. Under 2.5 goals at 1.95. And the Asian handicap here, we've got West Ham -1 at 2.12. Crystal Palace +1 at 1.85. So top of the table, West Ham up against Crystal Palace. Give us your views.
I can only see this one going one way. There's something about West Ham this year. There is something quite intimidating about West Ham. They feel like the real deal. David Moyes has a twinkle in his eye. A massive result in their stadium that was packed, and it was noisier than I've ever heard it. It's not always been a halcyon place. It's not always been a happy place. But that Olympic Stadium was rocking the other day. And when I heard them singing Bubbles beforehand, I did think that there was something in it. And to destroy Leicester the way they did was a statement. It would make a mockery of their season so far to go away to Newcastle and win, to beat Leicester so convincingly, to then drop points to Palace at home. I can't see it happening. And I think that they will totally unravel Crystal Palace, and it's going to finish West Ham United 3, Crystal Palace 0.
Okay, so 3-0 from your perspective. Joe Ryan's certainly going 3-1, so he's very much in the camp with you. As we reflect still on West Ham there, but they're going for the Asian handicap structure. West Ham, Crystal Palace, you're getting 3.25 there, with West Ham at minus 1.75 in the Asian handicap. All right, let's skip back now to another game that we need to discuss, and that is Norwich-Leicester. Norwich, bottom of the table, currently at 4.80. Leicester, mid-table at the moment at 1.87 in the head-to-head. So Leicester is your favourite. Over 2.5 goals, you're getting 1.80. Under 2.5 goals, 2.15. And in the Asian handicap system, Norwich at plus a half, 2.12. Leicester, minus a half at 1.91. All right, give us your assessment here, Rory, because the bookmakers see Leicester as quite clear favourites against a Norwich team that really have not had the best of starts in many mindsets. They look at a team that's well and truly on the pathway to being relegated.
Yes, I completely agree with that, Shane. I think that there will be no jeopardy in this one whatsoever. I think that Norwich are going to be in trouble and Leicester will win it really easily. I'm going Norwich 0, Leicester 3. But I actually think it could be more. It could be a cricket score, depending on how Leicester shape up, depending on what Leicester want to do. You know, Brendan Rodgers may want to keep everybody fresh. They're in the Europa League. They might want to keep it calm and they'll, end up winning 3-0. But if they want to make a statement, if they want to go for the jugular, they could also do that. And it could be even more than 3.
Okay, it could be a thumping victory from your perspective. Interesting, our betting expert community, they're going down the path. They think that Norwich could win or draw at the odds of 2.05. So they're hoping that there could be a bit of a resurgence from a very much out of sorts Norwich.
I can't see it. I don't think there is I don't think it's there. I think in order to have some sort of a resurgence, there has to be the spark, there has to be the skill, there has to be the managerial acumen. And I think it's all lacking from this Norwich team. I think it's as guaranteed a relegation from a squad that I can remember. I just can't. I see no light here. I see no beacon of hope. I don't see anything in this team, and I think that they are doomed.
I like it. Doomed. Love it. 3-0 is your tip. And Joe Ryan also sides with you, but he thinks it's going to be a closer encounter. I think it will be 1-0. All right, on Saturday night and Sunday afternoon, we've got two potentially defining matches, and we're going to take an in-depth look, of course, Liverpool and Chelsea, and Burnley and Leeds. What a match this is going to be. Liverpool up against Chelsea. It's second versus third on the Premiership table and two of the biggest clubs in the competition. Let's have a look at the early markets for this outstanding battle. And you've got Liverpool, the marginal favourites at the moment, at 2.5. Chelsea currently 2.90. So Chelsea second on the ladder. Just slight outsiders against the at-home Liverpool. Over 2.5 goals, you're getting 2.10. Under 2.5 goals, you're getting 1.91. And if you want to go the Asian handicap route, Liverpool on 0 at 1.82, Chelsea on 0 at 2.10. It's certainly going to be a fantastic contest. And to help us analyse this match, Ross Chandley, who's the social media manager for the Redmen TV, has been good enough to join us. Ross, first of all, welcome to the show. Appreciate having you on the big stage. Where'd your passion for Liverpool come from?
Thank you. Thanks for having me, first of all. The passion came from not having a choice when I was a child, basically. My dad was born and raised in Anfield, so I grew up on stories of him going to matches and stories of him looking after people's cars, or certainly taking money off people to look for cars and then maybe not doing so. I also had on my mum's side, they're all Scottish, so I had an uncle who was obsessed with Kenny Dalglish. So, he bought us football kits with kids and stuff like that and gave them to us. And then ultimately, like most fans, you get taken to a game, you go up the steps, you see the turf, and you don't look back. So I think my first game was it was a Coca-Cola Cup game in 95 or 96 against Charlton. Robbie Fowler scored, and then I just idolised him since then, and I haven't looked back.
Tell us a little about the Redmen TV. You guys create a fantastic content. You're all passionate about Liverpool. How did it all come about?
Well, we were actually one of the first fan channel. I think my bosses started over 10 years ago, producing content, and we've just grown since then. We're certainly one of the biggest in the UK, certainly one of the biggest Liverpool ones. So we have a YouTube channel with about 460,000 subscribers. We also have a subscription model on our website, so we produce pre-match, post-match content, and we also produce exclusive interviews, and we've started doing feature-length documentaries. So we did one a couple of weeks ago on Jordan Henderson with the likes of Jurgen Klopp, Kenny Dalglish, Jordan Henderson's dad, Trent Alexander-Arnold, just a really nice mix of people in there. So we're a happy bunch at the minute now. Last season's over.
What's the engagement like with your fans? Is there a particular type of content that they really like being a part of?
I suppose the documentary stuff, it's quite niche, it's quite different. There's a lot of, it can be a saturated market, YouTube channels and content and stuff like that. And, certain people like certain things. There'll be people that love Arsenal Fan TV for what it is. There'll be people that don't kind of like that sort of thing. So being a social media manager, it's good and bad this time of year. It's not great, but, we have fans that, basically all want the same thing as Liverpool to be successful. Trying to find a rationalised conversation on Twitter, I'm sure Rory will tell you, isn't the easiest thing to do.
It's hard to do at the best of times, but without the passionate fan side of things. What have you made of Liverpool's form going into the first few weeks of the competition this year?
Relatively happy. I think it's so hard to make a contrast into last season. There'll be much made of Virgil van Dijk's return, and obviously missing him last season. But I've had a bit of frustration with some people saying, well, Van Dijk's back, but Liverpool are actually missing Joel Matip, Joe Gomez, Thiago, Jordan Henderson, Fabinho, Alisson and Jota for large parts of last season. But in pre-season games, I'm starting to watch a Liverpool Football Club that I recognise the way that we played when we won the league. It wasn't, it was a case last season of who can play, who's got two working legs that can play this game, and shoehorning players into different positions. So I'm really encouraged, but I also have to take the fact that we played Norwich and Burnley. So I'm looking forward to this weekend and a real tough test.
All right, Rory, as I bring you back into the conversation, I mean, both Chelsea and Liverpool have started the season very, very strongly. What are you expecting on the pitch? Because this looks to be one of the biggest games we've seen at Anfield for quite some time. What type of match do you think we'll have this weekend?
I think it will be fantastic. I mean, I'm very nervous about it. I think it's a litmus test for both of us. I think both Chelsea and Liverpool have aspirations to win the league this year. Obviously, only one of us can do it. And I think, despite being so early in the season, depending on how it goes on the weekend, we will gauge who it could be. Like if somebody dominates the other, it will be a statement and it will be a marker that's laid down, and one team will build on that and the other team will have to recover from that. It's not impossible to do, but it will make life very difficult. I think over the years, the contests between the two clubs have been fiery. They've been really brilliant. And I mean, if you go back a decade or so ago, there was a really intense rivalry. I think Jose Mourinho and Rafael Benitez arrived in England a few days apart. And off the back of that, it was almost as if the touch paper was lit, because we played each other countless times. Both teams had their moments. Both teams felt the pain and the anguish. And the rivalry that was built up between Chelsea and Liverpool was actually one of the most intense in the country at the time. And I think that with Liverpool looking so good again, with Chelsea as current European champions, we could be about to see that reignite. The two clubs could be going head to head alongside a couple of other clubs, obviously, but Chelsea and Liverpool are both in the hunt for the Premier League this season. And I'm not sure that's happened for a long time, because when Chelsea were winning it, Liverpool weren't really in contention. And when in Liverpool's recent era of dominance, Chelsea weren't really in contention for the league. So this is the first time for a long time that both teams have genuinely thought that we could win the league.
Ross, do you see it similarly?
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with any of that. I think something that Roy was talking about before, was listening earlier on the show, was we mentioned the word respect, and I think that's not that I'd ever gone, but I think we have to, as a Liverpool fan, I respect what Chelsea have done over the past few years. I respect Thomas Tuchel and the improvement that he's made, not just on the pitch, but I think the mentality of Chelsea and their players, and he's really instilled a team unity and a winning mentality into that side, and of course that's shown with they've won the European Cup. So I think it would be daft to assume this would be an easy game. The other thing that interests me as well is the fact that it's just before an international break. So I think Rory's right in saying it's huge for either team that wins this, but then going into an international break of winning the game's always good before you do that, because you're boys, you're happy. International break can go one of two ways. You can be really happy and full of confidence, then it can disrupt your rhythm a little bit, but also you don't want to dwell on a loss too much, especially to a big team and what would be, I agree, a title rival.
The bookmakers have Liverpool as the marginal favourites, Ross. Do you think that is simply because it's a home game for Liverpool? Do you think the crowd will actually play a big part in this?
I hope so. There's a lot being made of Liverpool's crowd in recent years, and obviously I think we missed that a lot last year. But I think there's also the team and the way we're playing. I think, as I mentioned before, I think it seems to be forgotten in some parts of maybe mainstream media. The players that Liverpool were missing and how we dealt with last season was, at times wasn't great, but also the circumstances were even worse. The fans do play a massive part at Anfield, and I think being a Saturday tea time kickoff also helps to add that atmosphere. And like Roy said before, Chelsea are no mugs. Liverpool have that rivalry, as you mentioned before. Liverpool love beating Chelsea. I'm sure Chelsea exactly the same. It's one or two not so great memories of Chelsea coming to Anfield, which I don't really want to bring up, and I won't mention. So Liverpool need those fans back. They need them to be the 12th man. There was times last year where I said it wasn't going great before, but you can try so many things, and fans can not just play into big moments and scoring goals, but when things aren't going well, they can always G the players up and take, like, listen, like what you tried there, let's go again, and also hound Chelsea and put their players off a hostile atmosphere.
Rory, much has been made of Romelu Lukaku coming into the Chelsea side, and he looks to be in form. Who do you think the key players will be? What are the key matchups that you're looking forward to this weekend?
Yeah, I think you've probably hit the nail on the head. Ultimately, it's going to be billed as, at least, a war of attrition between Virgil van Dijk and Romelu Lukaku. How do those two get on against each other? I think it will be more complex than that, but that's certainly going to be the narrative. I actually think it's going to come down to who wins the midfield battle. Chelsea are so dominant in midfield, or try to be so dominant in midfield. We look after possession so well. The way that Jorginho recycles it, Kovacic, so good on the ball, carries it so well. I think it's going to be how do Liverpool combat that? And obviously, there was a time when Liverpool's midfield was just truly brilliant. And, I made a case for Jordan Henderson being a contender for Ballon d'Or one year. I was generally laughed at, but that's genuinely how I felt about him and how good a player I think he is. So how the midfield battle goes is what it will come down to. I'm obviously terrified of Mohamed Salah. I mean, I don't quite know how he does it. How does anyone hit a ball that hard without any backlift? It kind of defies science. I feel like it should be inspected. It's such a brilliant thing, such a mesmerising player. A shame that Chelsea let him go, but I think that we are witnessing greatness there. Liverpool obviously have a gluttonous amount of fantastic centre forwards. But in fact, it's one I'd like to hear Ross talk about rather than me. But where does he rank? When you think of the Liverpool centre forwards over the years, I grew up in an era when you'd always hear about the brilliance of Robbie Fowler. The generation before that, it was always Dalglish. Obviously, Ian Rush was a bit older than me. But then all through the years, Suarez, Torres, they've always had mesmerising centre forwards. But is Salah in that conversation now as one of the greatest Liverpool centre forwards ever?
100%, he has to be, yeah. His output, as you mentioned before, even assists don't really get spoken about a lot. I think he goes down. He can waste a lot of chances, but what this Liverpool side do is they create a lot for him. He's able to go and do that. The big difference is he's also, you said forward player there, because he's not a striker. He's a winger, but he's still producing numbers which are ridiculous. And even though we had a terrible season last season, his performances and his goals and assists were great. So hopefully we can get back to that point of, like you said before, the midfield battle of having Fabinho, Jordan Henderson, and hopefully Thiago Alcantara in the midfield, supplying him to score more goals this season. I think Liverpool are going to really G'd up the season and kind of feel really aggrieved what happened. But I think he's spot on. Salah for me already is in that conversation.
Let me ask you then, Ross, do you think the game will be somewhat tactical in the early stages in particular, or can you see one side come out all a-blazing, trying to put some damage in early on in the piece?
No, I think it's going to be tactical. My heart tells me that Liverpool are going to win this game, but also my head just says it's got a score draw written all over it, because I think ultimately a draw, even though you're at home, is a good result for both teams. We mentioned before, win or losing going into an international break can be damaging, or it can be really good. But I think with two of the title contenders in this league this season, I think it would be naive of either side to go out all guns blazing, because the quality on either side of the pitch, and I totally agree with Rory, the midfield battle will be interesting to see how that goes on. But there's threats from either side. Liverpool can't afford to just go gung-ho against Chelsea. You've got Lukaku there as well. He frightens the life out of me. I'm not sure whether Timo Werner will play, but Chelsea's attacking threat and the rotation that they've got on the bench scares the living daylight out of me. Kai Havertz is an excellent player. Mason Mount is excellent as well. So I think it's going to be tactical, and I think it will end up a score draw.
Okay, you're going for a draw. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. From a defence perspective, Rory, where do you think the strength lies? Is it with Chelsea or Liverpool?
I think it's probably. I think both defences on their day can be incredibly miserly and stingy, can't they? I mean, Chelsea have a defence that a defence that have full faith in. It's a system that works for us as well. You know, when Thomas Tuchel came in, that was actually the difference that he made. We went from being very open to not conceding. We didn't score many either, but we just didn't concede for ages, and that is how Chelsea can set up. Chelsea can squash a game, kill a game, make sure that there is no sting in the opposition, and ultimately grind something out. And when you look at Liverpool's defence, you know, within it, you've got arguably the best left back in the league, arguably the best right back in the league, probably the best centre back in the world on his day, and then whoever plays alongside him. So both defences are really strong. The edge that we have, I think, is obviously we don't know the Van Dijk quality at the moment. We don't know the player that he's going to be. So that would be our edge. But the edge that they have is they probably have the best goalkeeper in the league. So it's so tight, isn't it? You know, every time I give something to Liverpool, I think of an equaliser for Chelsea, and equally every time I think of something good for Chelsea, I can think of a Liverpool way of combating it. It's on a knife edge, this one.
All right, before we move on and get your final thoughts on the game from both of you, I just want to ask this one question. Rory, I'll start with you. Where do you think, you mentioned the midfield's going to be super important, but where do you think the game can be won from a Chelsea perspective? And is it going to be early or late?
I think Chelsea will be relying on Lukaku. It is a down to Lukaku. Look, there's loads of other reasons that Chelsea could win the game. You know, we have fantastic players who have all of the guile and craft of anyone in the league. You know, Kai Havertz is as good and as brilliant as anyone else in world football when he's on song. Marcos Alonso is totally capable of scoring a winner and following in the footsteps of doing a homage to Branislav Ivanovic, who scored a couple at Anfield about a decade or so ago. But ultimately, it's down to Lukaku. I do think that this game will be won or lost. If Lukaku has a good game and it goes well for Chelsea, I think we'll win it. If it doesn't quite go Lukaku's way, if Van Dijk manages to pocket him, it's probably a draw. But equally, Liverpool are perfectly capable of winning it. This is one of those, I think, Shane, that is just almost impossible to call because all of the above is feasible. Is feasibly going to happen.
That makes a lot of sense. Ross, from your perspective, I know that you're suggesting it will be a draw, but if Liverpool can put this game to bed, where do you think it'll be?
Could be from anywhere, and this is the delight that I'm happy to see Liverpool back now. If we've got those players back, we've got those bodies back, we can play the way that Liverpool play. And that, we talked about Virgil van Dijk before, not just from a defensive perspective, but look at the goal that we scored against Burnley, the second goal. We can spray 60, 70-yard balls and akin to Bayern Munich for Mane. We can assist with our centre backs. Chelsea are capable as well, but it allows us to push our full backs up. It allows Fabinho, Jordan Henderson to drop deep and kind of cover that. So I think it's about the early aggression in the game, almost kind of stamping your foot on the game. Liverpool have threats from anywhere on the pitch currently right now. As have Chelsea. Like Roy just said, nailed it there. It's impossible to call because you can see Chelsea pinching a goal, Lukaku, causing problems. I think Joel Matip's criminally underrated in his league as well, by the way. To his detriment, he's always injured. But he started the season really well. So, one of them, Lukaku doesn't fancy chances against Virgil van Dijk. Does he then go and try and target Joel Matip in this game? I think Chelsea can probably get something from there. Liverpool have always got to the point where we've got healthy competition back in the squad. Now, Jota scored, Mane scored, Salah scored, Firmino scored. They're all going to be hungry, but they're also all going to be looking over the shoulders, thinking if we don't perform, I won't be in the squad in the next game. So Liverpool can score from anywhere for me.
All right, let's have a look at what the betting expert community thinks for this game. And they've put together a bet builder, and we've got Chelsea or draw into both teams to score into over 2 goals. So we're getting currently 3-1 or 4.0 for that. How do you feel about that as a selection, Ross? Do you think we can see that happening?
Yeah, that's exactly what I predicted, and I might have a little dabble on that. To be honest, it's you always end up with these hype games, and because they're so big teams, that I think there's also an element where both teams are kind of scared to drop points, which plays into the game as well. Now it'll be interesting to see how Chelsea do start the game because we mentioned the Anfield atmosphere before. Chelsea can easily take possession and dominate possession in that game if they wanted to because they have the players and the capability of doing that. If you notify the crowd, quieten things down in the first 10-15 minutes, they can do that. But I'm sure both teams will want to stamp a mark, as Roy said before, early on the season, but actually know where we're going to win the league this season, and we're going to let you know about it.
All right, Ross, give us your selection again. You're going for a draw. What's the scoreline?
Yeah, 2-2. I think Salah's going to get 2, and I'll go Lukaku to get 2 as well.
All right, 2-2 draw there from Ross. Rory, give us your view. Are you siding with Chelsea? Can they pull off the win against their arch rivals here?
Yeah, I am, but I also concede that I just do this out of blind tribalism. Like, there's no logic. There's no logic here. No, you're right, Ross. You're completely right. I respect Ross so much more than I respect myself. He's completely correct. I'm going 2-0 Chelsea, but that's because that's what I want it to be, and not necessarily what I think it will be.
All right, 2-0 for Rory. And Joe Ryan's going with a 2-2 draw, so very much in the camp with you there, Ross. I've got a question for you both before we wrap up. Ross, I'll start with you. Which of Liverpool and Chelsea can wrest the title away from Man City this year?
I think it's a tough call, to be honest. For Liverpool, it depends on how our players come back. Rory, again, mentioned it before. There's a lot made of Liverpool, and obviously we've got Konate in the season, and the frustration from fans of not buying someone isn't because we don't have the quality, but there's so many question marks over Naby Keita, can he stay fit? Oxlade-Chamberlain, can he stay fit? If Virgil van Dijk gets a setback, is he going to be okay? Do we have cover? Same for Joe Gomez. Joe Matip mentioned before, he's made of, his legs are made of paper. That's everyone's concern. And what happened last season as a fan, honestly, it was terrible, and that all plays into our minds. Going, if that happens again, we've got no chance. Whereas I can argue for Chelsea, going, well, the European champions, they've got to start a full season with Thomas Tuchel has instilled that mindset and mentality into the side. The boys, because they've won that, it's a very tough call. But also Manchester City are in that conversation, particularly if rumours believe they're going to get Cristiano Ronaldo. It's impossible to call. So I'm going to do what I didn't do for the prediction, and I'm going to put red tinted glasses on to say it's Liverpool.
All right, good stuff, Rory. Are you with Chelsea, or can you see Liverpool finishing above?
No, of course I can't. That's not because they're not going to, but no, I can't see it. But again, I concede that I'm doing this through no sort of science. I'm doing it purely through what I want to be true.
Love it. Hey, Ross, thanks so much for joining us, and we wish you and all of the fans of Liverpool all the best for the season ahead.
Thanks for having me.
Not all of us wish that.
Thanks,
not
Ross.
for this week, anyway.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the game.
Great to have Ross Chandley from the Redmen TV joining us here on the big stage. Rory, you were fantastic there. I actually like your diplomacy being shown there. The fact that you are saying that it was very, very good of Ross to be able to push for a drawed match between Chelsea in that contest.
Yeah, I mean, I think a draw is the sensible option. If I try and remove all sort of tribalism, all sort of look, if I'm bipartisan here, a draw makes total sense, and the 2-2 that Ross suggested is probably the most educated one you could go for.
All right, let's move on to the other big game of the weekend that we need to talk about and spend a bit of time focusing on, and that, of course, is Burnley up against Leeds. Now, if we have a look at the head-to-head here, Burnley is at 3.10, Leeds at 2.30, over 2.5 goals. You're currently getting 1.83, under 2.5 goals at 2.10. And for those wanting to have a bet on the Asian handicap, Burnley at plus 0.5 at 1.68, Leeds at minus 0.5 at 2.3. So we've got two teams that are currently towards the bottom of the table, but Burnley put up quite a physical performance against Liverpool in the weekend, which probably helped them give Liverpool problems, making it more of an interesting match than we thought it should be. But now they face a Leeds team known for intensity. Now, the bookmakers do have Leeds as slight favourites in this one. I suppose the big question here, Rory, is this the reason for them not being the bigger favourites, the fact that they're facing one of the few teams that can match their intensity?
Yes, I think it probably is. I think this is a tough game for Leeds. I think Leeds are generally a team that are going to play very well against teams that have an expansive approach, but this isn't ideal for them. And I also thought, but I've predicted a 1-1 here. I think it will finish 1-1 between Burnley and Leeds. And the reason I've gone for that is because I watched the Liverpool game. And although Liverpool were worthy winners, they won the game 2-0, it could have been different. Burnley just didn't quite have the rub of the green. It just didn't quite go their way. They weren't clinical enough. They weren't ruthless enough. But it just didn't fall for them. But I saw enough to think that they will get enough points to certainly be safe. But they need to start accruing them now. They've never lost their first 2 games of the season since they've been back up, and they've now done that. So they need to get some points on the board, and I think it will start against Leeds. They'll get a draw. Okay,
it's good that you reference that, because I suppose one of the challenges Burnley have had, that they're the lowest scoring team in the competition since the start of last season. I think they've only had 15 goals there in their last 20 games. So the pressure's really going to be on to actually convert.
Yeah, completely. They're so wasteful. I think that's the problem. I think even if you think about that game against Liverpool, they were great, but it probably wouldn't have changed the result. But Ashley Barnes got a chance pretty much the last kick of the game, and he was so profligate. I mean, he should have definitely put it in the back of the net. It was a very easy chance. He will be gutted that he missed it. But if he scores that, Burnley then have a minute to really put the pressure on, and you never know. So they need to be more ruthless, and Ashley Barnes will be feeling very guilty about that chance, I'm sure.
Could this be a season-defining match for both teams here because of the fact that there is enormous pressure going on them?
No, I don't think. Look, if Leeds end up losing this, I don't think it's a crisis at all. If Burnley end up losing it three in a row, I still think that Sean Dyche will be fine. And ultimately, Burnley are only trying to accrue 40 points anyway. So they're still well on course to do that, even if they take none from the first three. Leeds United, I think, had higher aspirations this year. They would be desperate to push on and finish better than mid-table. That will probably go out the window. But again, I don't think any result here is quite as desperate as that.
We had a bit of chatter in the office during the week suggesting that perhaps Burnley have been overachieving for years. Is that something you subscribe to?
Yeah, it's true. That's absolutely true. They've been brilliant. They really have. And Sean Dyche doesn't, for some reason, doesn't get any credit. He doesn't get the credit that he deserves, in my opinion, at all. When you look at the way that praise is lavished on somebody like Graham Potter, and Sean Dyche is weirdly seen as being a bit of a joke. I think he's done a tremendous job. I think he deserves an opportunity at a club with higher ambitions. And I look at the work that he has done at Burnley, and I think he is a top-class manager.
Well, our community bet for the betting expert fans, they're actually going Leeds to win at 2.3. So give us your assessment on why you think it's more likely to be a one-all draw. You're going against the community here.
I just think that I saw enough in the Burnley-Liverpool game for Burnley to get some points. Naturally, Leeds are stronger. Leeds will probably be most people's favourites. But I just thought that Burnley had enough to trouble Liverpool. So against a club not as good as Liverpool, I think that they could get something out of the game. It won't be enough to win the game, but it will be enough to get a point out of it.
All right, so 1-1 draw from Rory. Joe Ryan's also going for Leeds to win. He's gone for 2-zip up, so siding with the betting expert community. We've got a lot more to talk about with Harry Kane and also the final two matches of the round. And of course, the next game to talk about is Tottenham up against Watford. Let's have a look at what we can see here. Head to head, Tottenham currently fifth on the ladder at 1.44. So short price favourites over Watford at 8.75. The draw is at 4.75. Over 2.5 goals being scored at 1.83. Under 2.5 goals at 2.10. And in the Asian handicap, Tottenham -1 at 1.7. Watford +1 at 2.25. Rory, we've got to talk a little bit more about Harry Kane because, as you said at the top of the show, it has been a massive discussion point throughout not only the Tottenham fan base, but all of Premier League fan base is what was Harry Kane going to do? Well, the decision has been made that he's going to stay. What type of influence do you think that decision happening this week will have on this game?
I think it will probably have a positive one because ultimately they have a player that is supreme. He is a top class player. He's an elite level football player, and they now have him at their disposal, and he will be fully focused on the job in hand at rocketing Tottenham up the table. Tottenham have started very well. You know, they've got maximum points without Kane. Securing Kane, it could be viewed through the prism of being like a new signing. So I think it's good news for Tottenham, at least in the short term. And playing Watford at home, it's almost ideal for Harry Kane. It's almost the ideal place to bring him back, let him refamiliarise himself with his teammates. I imagine he owes them an apology, but this is the perfect place for him to start.
All right, what's the scoreline?
I think, annoyingly, Tottenham are going to win it 2-0.
All right, Tottenham 2-0. Joe Ryan's actually think it's going to be an easier win. He's gone 4-0 Tottenham. So the community have gone Watford at plus 1.25 in the Asian handicap at 1.88. So it's certainly from the community's perspective, they're thinking there's some sort of chance that Watford might be able to perhaps snatch a draw, as the bet implies. Do you think there any chance of trying to pull a draw? I know you're pretty confident that Tottenham will win, but what could you see that could make Watford pull off a draw at least?
Oh no, Shane. There's always a chance where Tottenham are concerned. There's always a chance. Tottenham have a propensity to be that average side. They have a tendency to be the side that snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They could certainly make a pig's ear of this game against Watford. I think it's unlikely, but no, I think that the fact that Ndombele isn't happy, the fact that Harry Winks will probably have to play. You look at their back line and it's atrocious. Yeah, there's a chance. There is a chance for Watford here. It won't be surprising. Sadly, I don't think it will come to fruition. But yes, if you're a Watford fan heading to White Hart Lane, there is certainly a significant chance that you get something out of the game.
I love it. All right, let's move on to the final match that we'll discuss for the round, and we've got Wolves up against Man U. You have a look at the head-to-head. Man U, who are currently in 6th position, are the favourites at 1.75. Wolves at 4-1 or 5.0, with a draw at 3.8. Now, if you want to go the goals margin, over 2.5 goals at 1.91, under 2.5 goals at 2.05, and the Asian handicap, Wolves at plus a half at 2.18, Man U minus a half at 1.8. So that is the market there. Even with a draw against Southampton, Manchester United have certainly looked impressive so far this season, I suppose the best way of describing it. Rory, Wolves have created plenty of chances this season, but they still have not scored. The bookmakers agree that Manchester United should be the favourites. They are the favourites, but what could you see that could cause trouble to Man U?
I think Manchester United are going to win this one, annoyingly. I just think that they're going to be too good. They have too much quality to not win 2 weeks on the row against lesser opposition. I think they'll learn from what happened against Southampton. They'll learn to be more ruthless. They'll learn to be more up for it, be more decisive, and ultimately the class will tell. You know, when you look at this Manchester United team, people are always being very forgiving towards Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. They say, maybe he doesn't need to win the league this year, or he's already done a good job to get them competing again. And I think it's nonsense. This Manchester United team are superior to virtually every other team in the league in every position. You look at their team, you look at overall across the back line, it's world-class player after world-class player after world-class player. The midfield, Manchester United fans will always flag the Fred McTominay debate when we talk about their midfield. But what they don't do is talk about the other two midfielders who are both 10 out of 10 players. Paul Pogba, 10 out of 10, one of the best in the world. Bruno Fernandes, 10 out of 10, one of the best in the world. So overall, your midfield is two flawless players and then a 7 out of 10 Brazil international. I mean, come on. And I think that the attack line as well is top class. So the quality in their team will get them over the line at Molineux, not the brilliance on the bench. The Achilles heel in this Manchester United team is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Let me ask you about this, because the betting expert community have come up with what I think is a pretty strong bet, and they think over 2.5 goals at 1.91 is the way to go. Do you see value in that?
Yes, I could see that. I could see that happening. I think that there is certainly room for goals to be scored here, because I think if you look, Manchester United have demolished Leeds, but Leeds managed to score. They played Southampton, who at the time people were thinking were contenders to go down. They scored. So there is always a chance that Manchester United will concede and therefore need to score more goals. So to suggest that they may need to score a lot, and the fact that the game could have a lot of goals in it, I think, there's definitely mileage in that.
All right, give us the scoreline. Who wins?
I think that Manchester United get over the line. I think it will finish 2-1 to Manchester United.
All right, 2-1 from Rory, Manchester United to win. Joe Ryan's gone 3-1 Manchester United to win. As we mentioned, the community best bet there, over 2.5 goals being scored at 1.91. All right, let's have a quick look at the selections from Joe and Rory throughout the round coming up. And at the moment, Joe is ahead of Rory with 14 winning selections ahead of Rory's 8. But of course, Rory coming off what was a very good tipping scenario last weekend with his profit margin for bets suggested being ahead of the game. So good luck this weekend. Rory, a big question. I know the game that everyone's talking about will be Liverpool v Chelsea. Is that what you're looking forward to the most?
Yes, I mean, that is the jewel in the crown this weekend, isn't it? The events of Anfield, I think everybody's eyes are going to be on Anfield.
All right. Thanks for your time as always, Rory. Good luck this weekend. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you, Shane. See you soon, everyone.
There's Rory Jennings with his views on what's coming up with the Premier League this weekend. And of course, with Rory and Joe, you'll be able to get all of their selections and their bets up on bettingexpert.com for each and every round of the Premier League, as well as our community bets. So, of course, plenty to look forward to. We've got some fantastic matches coming your way this weekend. I really think it's going to be a defining round 3. It's amazing to say that so early in the season, but there's some top-class action on the pitch. So if you are having a bet, gamble responsibly, and we'll see you again soon here on the big stage.